Hey guys, I'm here talking about Sonic Adventure DX. So it begins, the 3D world of Sonic. I definitely grew up on the 2D games as a kid, and when Sonic transitioned into 3D, it was a very rough transition. It was very questionable, let's say. But how do I feel about this game today? I still like it. I guess I'm still nostalgic for it, but I do admit it's not a good game. It's not really good, and it's broken in a lot of ways. Not as broken as '06 is broken, but it's still, not the best. So funnily enough, Sonic Adventure came out on the Dreamcast, and eventually when that was gutted, they ported it to GameCube. So Sonic Adventure DX. Which stands for Director's Cut for some reason. I have to say, though, that this also began to be a huge influence on me as a child, simply because the intro to this game was insane. And the fact that we now had, rock and roll music, Open Your Heart, it activated something within me. I was like, oh man, Sonic's effing cool now, bro. I was fully a Sonic child. I was fully that guy. I was that kid who's like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. So what has happened since basically Sonic 3 and Knuckles? So Sonic Adventure and Knuckles, what happens is basically they kept kind of a lot of the same script where, Tails is a mechanic and he has, his 200 IQ and he can, has his airplane. Knuckles is still the echidna who guards Angel Island and the Master Emerald, and Eggman is still after the Chaos Emeralds. And now Angel Island kind of appears and, people are coming, they're investigating it. But now we have kind of like a hub world. We actually have a hub world now where you have the city, Station Square, or Central Square, I think it's called. And you have the casino, and you have all of these real life places, and the whole sort of mission structure, act by act, zone by zone, is totally gone in favor of a more like open world-esque Sonic, which is so funny that they tried this immediately when they went to 3D. They didn't even stop to think, maybe we should keep it, sectioned off as like a linear thing. But no, they're like, oh, there's certain parts in where you have to go to different parts in the world to find an item. Oh god, there's this one thing in the canyon where you have to like open up this rock wall, grab this statue, and then pick it up and take it to the top of this mountain, basically. And God help you if you drop it, because then you have to put it in this pedestal. And it's very janky. That's the way I would describe this game. It's very janky. And a lot of the songs are a lot of the music is kind of hit or miss. It's like kind of okay overall. The main theme, though, is amazing. And they really wanted this to be a full adventure and really see what they could do with the 3D technology. So what happens is you do play as Sonic, but you actually play as like 6 other characters. You have Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Big, and oh my god, the robot, E102 Gamma or E103 Gamma. I forget which number he is, but he's one of actually 6 robots that Eggman creates to hunt down and capture the Chaos Emeralds. And it is also introduces a new antagonist called Chaos. And so Chaos itself is this strange being that is made out of basically water, and it can basically use the Chaos Emeralds to evolve itself, and it's this ancient creature that is basically transforming itself into this new creation as it consumes the Chaos Emeralds. And Eggman, of course, wants to feed it Chaos Emeralds and eventually control it when it finally comes to fruition. So there are actually 6 different stories, and each character plays differently. So it's completely, totally revamped. So they not only did just, Sonic's level design and how he's going to work in 3D. But he also they did it for like 6 other characters, which is really really impressive, frankly, especially when you're for your first real 3D game. I don't consider 3D Blast to be that's a different discussion, but the other thing you'll find is that in this Sonic game, the voice acting is very very hilarious, very hit or miss, very honestly just bad. It's sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's genuine. So Sonic, he basically, in his story, he's just out there to stop Eggman. And when you start the game, you can like choose each character, and will they spawn in their own special place. So Sonic is out there to stop Eggman, stop Chaos, save the day, all that good stuff. And then what's going to become a tradition going forward in the Sonic series is that when you finish Sonic's story, then you have to do everyone else's story to unlock the true final ending. Tails, he of course wants to help Sonic, and he'll do a lot of things with his airplane and stuff like that. Knuckles, he's obviously protecting the Chaos Emerald, and he's doing his thing. Then you kind of get into the comical kind of aspects where you play as Amy and Big. So Amy, she has her giant hammer that she's able to smack people with. That's her big thing. And she basically is chasing down Sonic. And so she has this whole thing where there's Twinkle Park, where she has to basically go and try to take him on a date, and he refuses, and she's chasing him down all the time. And that's pretty funny. Big Big has probably the the most dumbest story of all. Basically, Big is this big fat mentally disabled cat, from the sound of it, and that's not just me saying it, but it's for those of you John St. John, who voices Duke Nukem, is also the voice actor for Big the Cat. And in the recording booth, allegedly they said, look, John, you need to just sound like the biggest, most lobotomized retard you can imagine. That's literally what they told him. And he's like, okay, I think I can do that. So that's who Big the Cat is. And so Big's mission is that he needs to save his best friend Froggy, who is a frog with a little tail. And it's this really funny / weird thing. So Big's story is that he's also, because he's a cat, he's a fisherman. And so his whole mission is that you basically go into the levels and you basically have to fish for Froggy. And you basically have to fight some enemies, but a lot of the gameplay is a fishing mini game, and it's so bizarre. It's like, okay, and it's not very fun. It's honestly pretty tedious, to be honest with you. But yeah, but then it turns out there's a twist where it turns out Froggy is actually some kind of creature of chaos that's related to Chaos. So you actually end up having some epic battle on the egg carrier, and you have to fish out Froggy out of Chaos to restore him. It's so ridiculous. Big is just the most, what is this character? What were they thinking when they made him? And he doesn't really appear again until Sonic Heroes, and then I don't know, they've literally forgotten about him. Actually, no, he does appear in Sonic Frontiers, I think, but he's just the one character that people are like, yeah, no, we're embarrassed we made this thing. And so in Amy's levels, she's actually being chased by this giant robot, and so it's actually a more of a survival horror thing. She has to basically get away from it and basically get to the end goal, and it's almost pretty similar. The only thing I think of is Nemesis from Resident Evil 3. Which is kind of crazy to think about in a kid's game, but there it is. And yeah, so Knuckles, he basically hunts down pieces of the Master Emerald, and so that's the beginning of what we'll see also in Sonic Adventure 2, where you basically have a little indicator and you have to find 3 pieces hidden throughout the map. And so compared to Sonic's story, a lot of the other character stories are usually much shorter, and Sonic obviously has the longest one. It's also interesting that, when you destroy enemies in this game, you will have their animal forms just kind of floating out in bubbles. There's a lot of very iconic Dreamcast esque aesthetics in this game that are just very, I think iconic. For example, one thing I think I really am memorable from this game are the water graphics are really unique and interesting. This is also the first Sonic game where we're going to see pickups and collectibles that are upgrades. So Sonic will be able to get things like a light dash, a ring that lets him bounce, I believe, and different other things that once you get them the first time, you never have to get them again. And then finally, you have E102 Gamma, and so he basically, it's interesting because he is a robot working for Eggman, and so his job is to track down, either Froggy or Amy or whatever creature has a Chaos Emerald or the Chaos Emeralds in general. And honestly, Gamma's story is honestly very interesting, and his gameplay is very fun. It becomes the mech gameplay in Adventure 2, where basically you can fire bullets, and if you hold it down, it locks onto things, and with a laser beam, and it's the coolest thing. For like a kid or anyone, it's the coolest thing to have a little lock-on thing and then fire a bunch of missiles once you have done it. Like it's so much fun. It's such a basic gameplay thing. I could have an entire game just based around that, which I guess would be something like Armored Core, but I jest. Anyway, and in Gamma's story, he has a bunch of other brothers, a bunch of robot brothers who all try to, find and do Eggman's bidding. And basically, there's, the initial robot that's kind of like the big brother. And so as you go on, Eggman punishes the other robots. And so basically, Gamma has to fight his other brother robots to find out who's the strongest. And his rivalry is with E101 Beta, who is, part of the 100 series of robots. I think it's implied that the robot that chases Amy is the 100 series robot, the Alpha. And it's a really cool kind of nod to what you're going to see in Sonic Heroes, where you have the new robot, E123 Omega, who becomes a kind of staple character of the series. But in any case, I would say that the more emotional component, honestly, is Gamma's story, because as he, finds, he kind of has it's the moral robot kind of story, where he kind of finds, Amy Rose and lets her go, and he becomes like a good robot and chooses between right and wrong and defies his programming and all that good stuff. And there's this, big climactic scene where, Amy's like, "Oh, Sonic, don't destroy him. He's a good robot." He's like, "Amy, how could you, how could you side with the enemy?" Typical behavior, I guess. But in any case, there's also a really cool thing where, you fight different versions of Beta, who comes back in different forms. And he kind of becomes the reoccurring rival. And eventually, Gamma decides to turn on his master, Eggman, and become a good guy, basically. And that's pretty much his story. It's interesting, though, that each character has an intertwining story with the overarching story. And the main character that kind of is implemented in that is the Princess Tikal. And she is basically only in this game, and she's a pretty interesting character because she's an Echidna princess. And so she essentially acts as this, this conduit to the past. And she is essentially this character who is there for the lore reasons. And so actually each character has this really cool flashback where they go back in time or something, and they meet this Princess Tikal, and she talks about how the god Chaos is going to be reawakened from his slumber if they don't stop meddling. And the kind of aesthetic they give the whole thing is like a Incan, Central American kind of vibe to the whole aesthetic and vibe of it. And so it has this weird, mystical, ancient thing. And of course, the story is that basically the tribes want to end up using the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald by extension for purposes of power and taking over the other tribes. And of course, this, creates an imbalance in nature, which summons chaos to extract revenge upon the I want to say human race, but the earthly races that decided to use the powers of chaos for evil and for self-centered reasons. And so it's kind of kind of an environmental messaging, just not as direct as the previous games, even if you could argue that there were animals being abused in the robots. But in any case, it's kind of like the nature itself is upset. And I think there's even one level which I think people kind of skip over, where it's like the second last level in Sonic when you do the ancient underground. And you come across this mural which prophesizes, Supersonic fighting, perfect chaos. And perfect chaos is when he has all 7 emeralds. And I always thought that was a really cool component because it linked into what we would see in Ventura 2, where, Professor Gerald creates the ultimate life form. And for some reason it looks exactly like Sonic, which is Project Shadow. And it's kind of a weird thing to notice that, because it's like, okay, well, why did he think this design would be the ultimate life form? And one of the fan theories is that Gerald basically studied the Echidna and the ancient Echidna civilization and myths and technologies, and somehow he also conferred through science as well as mythology that Sonic is just this mythical being. And he basically made a version of that, which is Shadow. And I thought that's a really cool concept that I'd like to see more of. It's funny when I think about the human NPCs in this game, because they're very derpy and they're very similar to the human NPCs we'd see in Sonic 06. I mean, the human NPCs in Sonic games have always been a little bit strange, like they're just odd in general, and they're not so bad in this game because it's kind of low res graphics. It's kind of comical, but in 06 obviously it's terrible, it's awful, it's very cringy and weird. Also, I have to say, I really like Eggman in this game and his personality. He's this arrogant, almost buffoonish kind of character. And what was actually really funny that was established very early on as canon in this game is that his name is still Dr. Robotnik, but Sonic and Tails call him Eggman as a nickname or as like an insult, because that's what he looks like. And I kind of wish they kept that in the game. He's now literally just called Dr. Eggman, but I like the idea that's actually like a nickname that Sonic gave him, and his name is still, Robotnik. I think in the official lore as well, it also details that Miles Tails Prower, so first of all, Tails has a middle name for some reason, and I believe they say something like, I don't know where I'm remembering this from, but Tails basically has an IQ of 200 while Robotnik has an IQ of like 150 or something. I think Tails actually has a higher IQ than Eggman, but that's kind of like the big rivalry that they have there, even though Tails uses his power for good and for the tornado. And it's also cool that in this game they acknowledge that Tails uses the tornado and upgrades it using the power of a Chaos Emerald, I believe, actually. And it becomes the Tornado X2 and becomes more like a fighter jet, and that's a really fun mission. I have to say, though, that the last enemy of this game, the Egg Viper, is completely... I wouldn't say completely unfair, but it's very kind of, I would say, aggravating. I mean, a lot of this game is just not made very well. It's just, very janky. And that's fine. But when you do get to go fast, you do go really, really fast. For example, like if you can charge up your spin dash in this game, it lets you basically almost go over like rooftops and skip whole levels. It's honestly really a way of cheating, and it feels more like a traditional Sonic game. They kind of slow it down more in the sequels, I feel, but maybe because of the level design, it feels like you can skip a lot of level by spin dashing up a certain area or something. It's kind of hard for me to think if I would recommend this game today, simply because it's just kind of it's just kind of janky, and it was janky when it even released. So for someone to go back and play this, I mean, you obviously could, and I encourage that if you're a diehard Sonic fan. But if you're not, and you're just kind of looking for a fun game to get into the series, I'm not sure if this is the best place to start. I mean, it's not bad per se, but if you're very picky, then you're not going to enjoy this game, basically. And so finally, we get another staple of the Sonic series in this game as well, where basically once you finish everyone's story, you can start the final story, and you can finally see the climax of everyone's effort come together. And you basically, slight spoilers, but you get Super Sonic, shows up, and you have to fight the big bad. One thing I do have to say that has bugged me to this day about this game has been how they handle the music in the final boss fight. I know this is the oddest thing to complain about or notice, but what they do is in the first half of the boss fight, they have the rockin' music, Open Your Heart main theme come out, and that I love that. And then for the second half of the boss fight, they change it to this generic monster music thing that it sounds like it's from the 1970s monster movie, whatever. And it's such a buzz killer. Just as no, that is not how that happens. You want to keep Open Your Heart for the second half, not the first half. That's the one thing I really have to complain also about this game in general. The music in this game in general, it's pretty good. It's all right, but we won't really see stage tracks having a big influence until I think Adventure 2 onwards. That being said, again, the intro to this game is ingrained into my mind. The effects, the style, the build up, the tension. There is nothing like it. I think the intro to this game might be one of my favorite intros of all time because it is so intense, and when they fade out at the end with the photo negative version of Chaos's reptilian eye, it's Kino. There's just no other word for it. It's so good. But the game itself, oh god, the voice acting, everything. There's it's one of those things you just come to appreciate. No, this is how things are. It's going to be not perfect. It's going to be a little bit cringe. It's going to be a little bit whatever. But that's fine. It's still a good game, though, and I still totally recommend it. Anyway, I think that's all I can really say on Sonic Adventure DX. Really, the beginning of 3D Sonic. It has its good and its bad. It's an odd footing of a game. It has a weird hub world that never shows up again until later games. And not much else to say except give it a try, I guess. I'll see you guys later. Bye.